Hey guys, what's going on? Today we're going to go over the whole process that I went through to get my salvage title S2000 to a rebuilt title and back on the road. Alright guys, so maybe you're like me and maybe you live in Georgia and you found a car that you want to buy, but it's a salvage title. And I personally didn't know much about it when I bought mine. My S2000 is sitting here behind me. So I bought it from a guy who is a small dealer and he does have a rebuilder's license, so he kind of helped me walk through the process. But I figured I would make this video and help anybody else out that's trying to go through the process or even just curious about how it works. So I put a link in the description. It goes to the Department of Revenue in Georgia. They have a page for all the salvage information, list of inspectors, list of all the forms that you need and the process and the steps and how it all works. But I figured I would make this video to go with that, just to support some of the information and take you through my process that I went through. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right guys, so let's get into the first part, which is buying the car. So the first thing you want to do is obviously find the car, whether it's from buying it from an insurance company or at an auction or something like that, and then go ahead and purchase the vehicle. Make sure you have all the documentation, which I'll go over right now.
So you can see here is a redacted version of the title that I received, indicating the salvage, as well as the owner being an insurance company, which transferred that over to the guy that I bought it from, which of course then had us use a supplemental form to transfer the title to me as the owner. So along with that, I also received a disclaimer of salvage history for the vehicle, as well as your general bill of sale, which outlines all the details of the sale since it's not your everyday transfer.
So one of the gray areas that I did find while going through this process was being a licensed rebuilder versus not being a licensed rebuilder. And on some of the Department of Revenue websites for Georgia, they do say that you're required to be a licensed rebuilder. However, I'm not, and I went through the process fine myself. Some of the inspector websites do say that you can do it yourself. You just have to let them know up front whether you are a licensed rebuilder or not. And the biggest difference that I've found is that most of the websites say if you are a licensed rebuilder, you can rebuild more cars per year, and if you're not, I believe you're limited to one. So me personally, I'm not going to be rebuilding cars once a year even, so I don't think that's something I would necessarily get into. If I owned a little dealership and I was constantly rebuilding cars, or at least constantly buying cars with a salvage title that required rebuilds, it would be something that would be worth it for me. But at this point, not something that I need to get into, but I did want to stop here and make a little comment in this video just so everyone knows. Let's get on to the rebuild. So the second part, once you've bought the vehicle and you have it back to your garage or shop or wherever you're rebuilding the car, the biggest thing is obviously repairing the car. And all the repairs are going to be geared towards getting the inspection done. So I made a list of all the things that are on the inspection, all the things that I've been told to go over, and a lot of the things that I did myself when I was working on the S2000. So let's go ahead and get into that.
One of the first processes before even repairing the car will be to document the car and take plenty of pictures in the salvage condition. At least one of these pictures will be necessary for you to complete the inspection process. Be sure to take pictures of all the damaged areas, particularly the exterior, as well as some of the interior as well, to show that the airbags are not deployed and that the SRS systems are in operating condition, or any of the repairs that have been made.
So here's a quick list of what I've compiled as some of the parts that are going to be looked at during your inspection. And these parts can fall into three categories: either aftermarket, new, or used. New and aftermarket are kind of the same thing. New referring to something new from the manufacturer, say Honda in this case, or aftermarket being something from an aftermarket provider. All these require is your general receipt, whereas the used items will require a VIN number for the vehicle that they came off of.
Also, make sure that when you do compile your receipts that you are listed as the buyer for each part. Alright guys, here you can see a list of these replaced and repaired parts that will be checked during the inspection. This will cover everything from your hood, fenders, trunk lids, all your body panels, the frame supports, truck-specific items like the cab or bed, as well as grills, engine, transmission, some of the interior panels, dash pads, wheels, tires, airbags, as well as the windshield.
All right guys, so along with all those replacement parts, they're going to also have a safety checklist. So I'll throw the safety checklist up here in a second, but predominantly that's going to concern your lights, so taillights, brake lights, headlights, all that stuff, as well as the big hitters here are your ABS and SRS systems. So the ABS, or anti-lock braking system, they're going to check not necessarily the physical brakes themselves, which I'm sure they'll inspect, but ultimately they're going to be looking for any kind of warning lights or anything that would indicate that this system is not working properly. Same thing with your SRS, or the supplemental restraint system, is basically your seat belts and your airbags. They want to make sure that these are a functioning system, no warning lights on the dash. So if you haven't already, check out, I put out a little video a couple months ago about how I went through all of my issues in the S2000 and how I got that set up for my inspection.
You can see here from the list that along with everything else, it covers the exhaust, the windshield, the horn, and like I said, your lights, SRS, and ABS systems.
All right, guys, so now that we're here, we're at the most important and focal point of the whole process, and that's the third step, which is the salvage inspection. So everything we've done till now has gotten us to the inspection point. All the documentation, all the repairs, all the paperwork, it all comes to here. So there's a quick list, I'll throw it up here in a second, of all the paperwork that you'll need, as well as one very key point, which is you cannot drive the car to an inspection. That being said, there are inspectors that do travel, so check that link in the description. Included should be a list of the inspectors on different inspector locations, as well as email addresses and contact information for those who travel. So if you don't want to tow the vehicle, check that out. If not, you'll have to tow it to the nearest location and you can set up an inspection there. Each inspector kind of has their own requirements. I would suggest going onto their website or contacting them directly to make sure that you have everything that they need in order for you to do the inspection. But here's the list I've compiled of all the things that you'll need.
So you can see here, they're the first 5 items. Obviously the 1 or more photographs in the wrecked or salvage condition, as well as number 2 being the completed and signed Form MV1. These links are available from that link that I said is in the description. These are actually taken directly from there. So the third is the original valid salvage title. So all this stuff you should have. And then the Form T22R is the request for the inspection of a rebuilt motor vehicle. Number 5 is a completed and signed T129, which is your labor and parts certification. Number 6 here will show the receipts, like I said earlier, new or used parts, product names, make sure you're listed as the buyer. Number 7 is the copy of the rebuilder's license, or in my case I use my driver's license, as well as number 8, the $100 inspection fee. And of course the note that I mentioned earlier, you cannot drive the vehicle, it must be towed. Other than that, that's pretty much it. In my case, the mobile inspector actually filled out a lot of the forms for me using the information I had, so my process was very simple. Either way, the forms are not complicated and they're linked here below.
All right, so after going over everything for the inspection process, I'll go over my own inspection here real quick. So obviously I failed the first one and I passed the second one. I decided to use a mobile inspector, which was fairly easy. I emailed him all my information, which included my driver's license, my title, bill of sale, and the supplemental form, as well as my receipts and photos of the vehicle in the salvage condition. So that way he had everything that he needed. He knew what I changed, he knew what I repaired. And once we had that scheduled, he came out, probably took about 45 minutes, if it was even that long. He did end up failing me the first time due to a steering issue. If you've seen some of my other videos, you probably know what that issue is. If not, feel free to go back and check. I'll have the playlist linked here for the S2000, and feel free to go through the whole thing again. But ultimately, I failed the first inspection. I repaired the steering, got in alignment, replaced the bumper absorber, which is a piece of styrofoam that sits behind the front bumper. And once I did that, I sent him the receipts for that, and he came right back out and passed on the second time. So once that's all done, we can go ahead and we can jump into the registration and rebuilt title process. So you finally passed your inspection and you're finally into the last step of the process, which is getting your rebuilt title and then eventually registering the car. So the rebuilt title is actually a fairly easy process. You can either mail it in or you can go in person. Generally, they tell you to mail it in. It does take a couple of weeks sometimes, but I wanted the instant gratification, as well as it is my first time, so I wanted to make sure that I had everything that they needed. Plus, I live in the Atlanta area, so going in was not a particularly difficult thing, but they did it by appointment only due to the pandemic. So let's take a look at the list of things that you'll need.
So here is the listed reasons why you might have to go through the process, as well as what to do if you have an out-of-state title that is branded rebuilt or restored. Again, the same information from the inspection is what is used for the retitling process, and once you pass the inspection, you can send all the documentation as well as $118 to the address below, or in my situation, I went and did it in person at the office.
So once you finish with the rebuilt title process, either by mail or in my case I did it in person, you should also receive a ad valorem tax request, which in Georgia they do request all the taxes up front on every vehicle that gets registered. So with that request, you'll also get registration for the vehicle showing it in your name, as well as a receipt for any fees that you've paid. And what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna take that tax request and go down to your county tax office, but not before. If you do live in a county that requires emissions, make sure you get that done as well. That's a whole nother, normal process that you do every year if you do live in one of these counties, like I do. And other than that, it's pretty much the same as registering any other vehicle. So go down to the county tax office, pay your tax, pay your registration, make sure your emissions is up to date if it's needed, and they should hand you a tag right on the spot, and that will complete the process. So for me, it took about 5 months. I probably could have done it faster if I was focusing more on getting it done and not some of the other stuff that I had going on. But it wasn't terribly difficult, but it was rewarding. And by the time I finished, I felt really good about it. And I don't want to say I enjoyed it because it felt like a lot of jumping through hoops at times, but it definitely was an interesting experience for me. And I hope you guys find this video interesting as well. So if you need any more information, check out that link in the description. I know I've plugged it a couple times, but any of the information that I've referred to or the forms should be linked in that page. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next video.